Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome back to the Artifact set review. Today it's time to start with the items. We're gonna talk about the weapons today. Let's get going. Okay, so first off we have Short Sword. This is mostly a limited card, but actually even shows up in some constructed decks sometimes simply because it's cheap and solid. Like for example, Stan Cifka was running a one-off in his red-black more mid-rangey hero killers deck. Card's actually pretty good. In limited, I especially like it in blue decks and even more in blue-green decks. First of all, the blue units need it the most to be able to one-shot melee creeps. A lot of them can't do it without. And on green heroes, Short Sword often means they two-turn some heroes they otherwise don't. And they even like one-shot some of the like small blue heroes or black heroes that have 4 or less health, like Prelex, Venomancer, Bloodseeker, Solar Khan, and that sort of stuff, like the lower health heroes. It's particularly good against Debbie, for example, because normally it leaves each of the heroes at 1 health. If you put a short sword on, the green heroes survive usually with 1 health and Debbie dies, which is a really big deal, so they are particularly good. And yeah, in constructed, if you just want some extra damage and want to put another 3-cost item in your item deck to cycle through your item deck, this is a solid option. Next we have Demagicking Maul. Usually you see 1 or 2 of those in constructed decks because there is a lot of powerful improvements in constructed, and while some decks barely have any targets for this, others are chock full of them, and then having access to 1 or 2 of these can be really good. In limited, as Stan Cifka said, this is mostly just an expensive short sword. The variety of improvements and whether or not your opponent has any while is a bit higher. It's also a lot harder for a lot of decks, I feel, to get use out of this because your deck is more generic and less focused around doing a certain thing, or for example making your hero not be blocked and stuff. So it hasn't been particularly impressive in limited, and it really depends on how good the gold economy is of your deck. If your deck has a lot of gold, it's totally fine to play this over a short sword because it might come in handy, but for example in blue-green decks or something, which is super gold stuffed, you really don't want any extra gold on potential value that may or may not happen and just want your short swords over those mauls, for example. Yeah, next we have Stonehall Pike. Another card that's not that great. Like the rate is kinda bad. You pay twice as much for a short sword and it takes like 3 turns till you get double the stats of a short sword, so that's kind of a bad rate. It can be fine in limited, like for example in blue-red, where you get a decent amount of gold, but you still have a bunch of heroes that have barely any attack, and putting a Stonehall Pike on a blue hero long term can make them much better at fighting, and if your deck is more controlling and the games go longer, you actually get there and get the value out of this. But it's not a great card and not one that I would most of the time be happy to put in my deck. Sometimes you can put it as like a top-end item in your blue-green deck, because both of the colors have like low attack heroes, so putting a pike on them can really help in the late game, and a Stonehall Pike is almost considered an expensive item in blue-green already, so you can just have some items that are a bit more expensive to cost like 6, 7, 8, 9, like 1 or 2 or something, to have some higher impact stuff, but the rate of these items is not very good. In constructed, this is pretty much unplayable for obvious reasons. Blade of the Vigil, another card that's not that great, like Cleave 2, just doesn't do that much. It kills some melee creeps over 2 turns, or actually means that your melee creeps together with the Blade of the Vigil might kill the creeps, the enemy and neighbor creeps of your hero right away, and that helps your creeps survive or helps your creeps kill 2 enemy creeps. So that's something to consider, but the card's pretty expensive for the effect. It gets more interesting when you're in red and have Ursa, because then the armor rending effect of Ursa affects its neighbors, making it a lot easier to actually hit an enemy hero to rend its armor, or even more than one hero or like a big creep where the armor rend has also impact, because on melee creeps it's like whatever. So yeah, not a card you want to play in Constructed and not a great card in Limited, but with Ursa it gets to a point where it becomes actually interesting, or like in green-red in general, where you have very limited ways of controlling wider boards and mitigating board size. Then we have the almighty Blink Dagger, one of the few slam dunk items in Limited. This card is just super powerful. Mobility is so good, especially if you get the mobility every 2 turns. It's amazing, and it comes with some extra stats attached. So yeah, in Limited, a very high pick. I often, and most of the time, pick this first pick together with something else if I see it. It's just better than a lot of the like other cards that you could pick. And in Constructed, most decks will run 3 of these. Some people run 2 in certain decks. I'm not 100% sure yet what the reasons or like the standards are for when you want less than 2 of these. But in the decks that I've played so far, in my experience, I've always been super happy with 3 of them. And yeah, they just give you so much play, so much room to outmaneuver your opponent. They're just amazing. Next we have Broadsword. Basically 2 short swords for the cost of 2 1/3 short sword. So I guess these items technically have to be a bit more expensive because you only have that 1 weapon slot and you couldn't put 2 short swords in 1 weapon slot to get the same effect. So them being 1 gold more expensive than 2 short swords emphasizes that getting +4 attack from 1 slot is much better than 2 from 1 slot for less than half the price. But yeah, not that impressive. Once again, a card that can shine in blue-green due to the stat sizing. Problem there is though that 7 gold is a lot, but it seems like potentially a better option for like a more costly card in your item shop than Stonehall Pike. And I occasionally run 1 and don't mind. In Constructed, this is not a consideration at all. Next we have Jasper Daggers. I don't think this card is playable in your item deck in any format really. This is one of those cards that exists more for the secret shop, because it's a card that can be situationally nice to have, and then you can roll it in the secret shop and just buy it when it's good, but the situations are too few and far between that you don't want to have them every game and show up multiple times during the game in your item shop and either force you to buy them or block you from buying something else. So you have to keep in mind that the secret shop makes it so that a lot of cards that you might not want to put in your deck are still good to exist because you can roll them randomly in the secret shop to get them in that rare situation where they happen to be good and you roll them in the secret shop. Next we have Keenfolk Musket. That's a really nice item. It's a bit costly, but has some solid utility, helps you finish off opponents, basically has a similar effect as Broadsword, except that you only get the 4 damage every 2 turns and not against towers, but you can actually send half of that damage wherever you need it in the lane, which is kind of a big deal and potentially pretty threatening, and also makes it hard for the opponent to play certain cards when this is active and stuff like that, because you can just one-shot them. Yeah, a card that I'm usually happy to have at least 1 in my item deck. In my decks, in some decks, I even end up with more than 1, especially if I have a bit more gold generation in the deck. In Constructed, however, this is not a card. This slot is usually occupied by Blink Dagger, and you also only want so many weapons and just a bit too marginal of an effect for Constructed, but in Limited this has been really nice. Then we have Poaching Knife, another one of those cards that I think is meant for secret shop, that random situation where you have the gold for it and you're in a situation where you're gonna generate more gold and you don't really need anything yet, but more gold would be nice, and it's technically a free item, so you just buy it, generate the gold back that it costs, and made the hero a bit better. But yeah, not a card I think that is usually meant to end up in an item deck in either format. Next we have Red Mistmaul. That's a very expensive short sword, but also a really nice finisher. Siege 5 is quite a lot, given that it's yeah, more than 10% of player's health, 12.5% to be correct, to be exact. And yeah, this is a great way to close out games, finish that one lane that the opponent is about to stabilize. Particularly great in aggressive limited decks. In Constructed, it hasn't seen much play yet. I think it's a bit too expensive, and there are better finishers in Constructed that you don't need this as much. But in Limited, this has been a pretty nice card, especially in like my red-black aggro decks in Limited. Then we have Claymore, one of those clunky items. 15 gold is a lot, plus 8 attack is kind of a lot, but also not that important. It's pretty overkill. Broadsword accomplishes most of what Claymore does until the like very late game against, I don't know, red heroes or heroes with a bunch of armor and tons of health, like Stonehawk Cloak with multiple stacks and stuff. But yeah, the problem with expensive items like this also is every time you roll them when you don't have the gold, you can't buy from your item deck, which is devastating. And the more expensive the items are, the more likely it is that you see them when you can't afford them and then can't buy anything from your item deck. So the more expensive an item gets, the worse this effect gets. And Claymore doesn't even have this game-winning payoff as some items like Ham of the Dominator have. So yeah, stay away from this. Just don't put it into your item decks in Limited, and it's not remotely a constructed card. Next we have Wingfall Hammer, another pretty expensive broadsword. The effect is kind of nice. It gives the equipped hero and its allied neighbors plus X regeneration this round, where X is half its attack, which is usually going to be quite a lot. But yeah, it's another one of those cards that you might just sometimes roll in the secret shop when you have a lot of gold, and then you'll be happy to have a kind of high impact item that can dominate a lane potentially, but it's not good enough and not good enough often enough for how much gold it costs to end up in a deck. They're just better high-end items if you want to put a high-end item in your item deck. And in Constructed even more so, like this is a limited card. And last but not least, we have the almighty Apotheosis Blade. It's a bit similar to Wingfall Hammer. It's a bit better than Wingfall Hammer, but not that much. You get twice the attack, you get 4 siege, so you get some finishing potential, which is nice. It condemns each unit, and yeah, that equipped hero deals battle damage to, so it rarely matters honestly, because with plus 8 attack and the fact that you can kill their items, you should be able to kill anything anyway. But just in case you don't, it's dead for sure. So yeah, I guess there's that. I guess there might be some units, like some creeps that you might not kill with this, like I don't know, Thunderhide Pack or Thunderhide Alpha, or Emissary of the Quorum, to name some here, or the Marrowfell Brawler with full health. But it's a pretty corner case thing. That part of the text is mostly irrelevant. The activation ability is nice. It condemns all improvements in the enemy improvements in the lane and each item equipped by the unit blocking equipped hero, to make sure they definitely die, which they already would anyway because of the blade saying that. Not the greatest 25 gold item, there are better ones. Another one of those items that you usually don't want to put in your item deck, but can be really nice and really powerful to find in the secret shop in the late game when you have a lot of gold. Then you just slam dunk it and face roll with it. But yeah, if you want to put an expensive item in your deck, look at Horn of the Alpha, Helm of the Dominator, or Vesture of the Tyrant. Basically, those are like the 3 powerful ones that have a really good impact or like effect to gold ratio, really. Okay, that concludes the review of the weapons. Tomorrow I'll be back with the review of the armor, and then we'll try and wrap up with the rest. I'll probably do the accessories and the few consumables in one go, because it's just not a whole lot, and then we're finally done with the review. Okay, hope you guys are still with me. This has been a long ride so far, but yeah, there's a lot to talk about, and I think it really matters to go over all the cards, especially with a new game that is so different from other card games, and it's a lot harder for a lot of people, I think, to evaluate cards, including myself. So it is definitely pretty interesting to think and talk through all of the cards. Okay, as usual, you can find me on social media and live streaming on Twitch over here. If you haven't checked that out, please drop a like on my Facebook page, follow me on Twitter, and follow me on Twitch. And if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button here, hit the skull icon to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification icon to not miss out on future content. And if you want to keep the free content going and help support the channel, please consider whitelisting YouTube to support the free content with ads. That would be amazing. That's it again from me. This was the artifact set review with the weapon items. I'm your host ManuS. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.